What is so special about this word? It's because it can be used in so many different ways. This is called a participle, and to reach a B2, C1 or C2 English level, you need to know how to use participles fully. This video is going to teach you 44 rules for using participles in English, and if you know and use them all, you will have a really advanced English level. Let's start with the basics. Firstly, present participles. This is where a verb finishes with ing. We often do this in continuous forms, such as I am playing for the present tense, past continuous I was playing, and in perfect tenses it could be I had been playing, I have been playing, I will have been playing. Past participles have ed at the end of the verb, unless they're an irregular form. We use these in many perfect simple tenses. I had played, I have played, I will have played. And we also use it in passive forms, such as I was visited by my parents. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds just like the past simple. Well, it's not. It's different to the past simple. The past simple always indicates completed past time. So if I say I played piano, that definitely happened in the past and it's definitely completed. Now, the past participle sometimes has the same form. So played as a past participle is the same as the past simple played, but it does not indicate time. So a piano is played by pianists. Just because I have the ed at the end of played doesn't make it past. In this case, it's the verb is that makes it present instead. A piano is played. That means now. Also in the next example, I will have played. That's not past, that's future. That's talking about a situation in the future, but I'm still using the ed played. Now, some verbs are different, again, where the past participle form is not the same as the past simple form. That makes it easier to distinguish, but don't be confused. Just because there's an ed ending at the end of a verb does not make it past simple. It could be the past participle. It's not just in verbs where we use these participles though. They're also found in phrases and clauses, adjectives and adverbs. Let's start off by looking at past participle phrases. So these are phrases with a verb in a past participle form. Not the past participle on its own, but it's in a longer phrase. Shocked by the news, she rushed to the hospital. So shocked is the past participle. It comes from the verb to shock, and it's followed with the words by the news. Discovered by explorers, Madeira is now owned by Portugal. Filled to the top with petrol, the car will drive smoothly. Let's explore this a bit further. They all describe a noun in the main clause. So shocked by the news describes she. Who was shocked? She was shocked. So shocked by the news tells us more about she before we go on to find out what she did next. She rushed to the hospital. Discovered by explorers, what does that relate to? It relates to the island of Madeira. Filled to the top with petrol, what's that referring to? It's referring to the car. They can add extra information that's either an action or a state. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't just have to be activities. It could be actions. It could be states. These are often, but not always, reduced passive forms. Shocked by the news really means she was shocked by the news. Really, we've got two sentences here. She was shocked by the news. She was rushed to hospital. What have we done? We've joined them together to make the relationship between the two items closer. We've introduced a kind of cause and effect relationship here. She was shocked by the news, so she did the following. She rushed to the hospital. But we've made it briefer here by simply using the participle phrase. Shocked by the news, she rushed to the hospital. One thing happens, the next thing is the result. Let's look at the next one. Discovered by explorers. This really means Madeira was discovered by explorers. Now, there's no cause and effect relationship here. We're just giving extra information about Madeira. Madeira is now owned by Portugal. That's the situation now, but we're giving extra information about something before. What happened to Madeira in the past? It was discovered by explorers. Both of these cases are reduced passives. But the last one is different. The last one is more like a reduced conditional. Filled to the top with petrol, the car will drive smoothly. This really means if the car is filled with petrol, it will drive smoothly. The first thing needs to happen for the second thing to be able to happen. And something else to know about these past participle phrases, at the beginning of a sentence, they are non-restrictive. So it's important to make sure that you follow that, because if you use a restrictive phrase, it won't work grammatically. What do we mean by restrictive and non-restrictive? Well, let's look at the examples here. An island found in the Atlantic is Madeira. Found in the Atlantic is a restrictive phrase because it tells us what type of island to expect. Not just any island, not an island in the Arctic or Pacific or the Indian Ocean, but an island found in the Atlantic. I am restricting the islands just to the island which is found in the Atlantic. Now, if I try and turn this into a past participle phrase, it doesn't work. Found in the Atlantic, an island is Madeira, is not grammatically correct. In the second example, we have a difference. We have a non-restrictive phrase. Madeira, an island found in the Atlantic, is owned by Portugal. Looks the same, but it's actually different because Madeira stays the same regardless of the phrase afterwards. The phrase afterwards is just giving extra information. It's not telling us which Madeira or what part of Madeira. It's just telling us something more about Madeira. The noun Madeira is not modified here. Madeira, an island found in the Atlantic, well, that's still just Madeira, is owned by Portugal. So it's non-restrictive this time. And yes, we can use this as a past participle phrase at the beginning of the sentence. An island found in the Atlantic, Madeira, is owned by Portugal. And if you want to take your learning of English further, you could take one of my courses. I have an Improve Your English Writing course that will help you with your writing skills, and 2 grammar courses, Advanced English Grammar for C1 or C2 learners, or my Perfect English Grammar course, which is good for English learners of any level. There's a link in the description below this video if you want to find out more. Now let's look at present participle phrases, which, as we've mentioned, are verbs in the ing form, so recovering, running, blowing. These describe an action by the noun. So recovering from the operation, she rested in bed. What was she doing? Recovering. It was an action that she did. Running for the bus, he tripped over the curb. What action did he do? Running. Blowing through the trees, the wind made a whistling sound. What did the wind do? What was the action of the wind? Blowing. Now, they can state reasons for an action, and that's what happens in the first 2. Recovering from the operation, she rested in bed. Well, this means she rested because she was recovering. In the second one, running for the bus, he tripped over the curb. Well, he tripped because he was running. So by placing that present participle phrase in the same sentence, separated by the comma here, we're increasing the level of the relationship between the 2 items, and we're putting first the reason for what happened in the main clause. They can also just give more information on the subject. So with the wind whistled, the wind blew. There's not one leading to the other. Perhaps the blowing does create the whistling sound, but they could also be separate. The wind was blowing, the wind was whistling. So 2 activities happening here at the same time. Sometimes they give the result of an action, and here's a different example to show that. Rain fell all day, filling my garden pond with water. What does that mean? Well, rain fell, so my pond got filled with water. So the ing form here represents the result, where one thing happens and that leads to another action. The rain was filling my garden pond. Something important to note here is it is better to use a present participle phrase before a pronoun rather than the pronoun and then the present participle phrase afterwards, because sometimes it doesn't work. The first example here doesn't work. He, running for the bus, tripped over the curb is not a way that we would normally express this sentence. The second one is fine though. The wind blowing through the trees made a whistling sound. So here, blowing through the trees comes after the noun. It could have come before. What we saw before was also correct. Blowing through the trees, the wind made a whistling sound. But here we can swap them over so that the wind has the phrase blowing through the trees after it as well. But with he, we couldn't do that. We needed to have it the other way round. It needed to be running for the bus, he tripped over the curb. Now let's look at something called perfect participles. And this involves the phrase with have in its present participle form followed by the past participle. For example, having cleaned the house, he sat down for a rest. Having reached the top, the climber stopped to admire the view. So having is the present participle form of have, but we treat it differently because it creates a present perfect kind of meaning. It can also represent the past perfect as well. It simply means something that happened before another. They tell us about something the subject did previously. So having cleaned the house, he sat down for a rest. Well, this means he cleaned the house before sitting down. Having cleaned the house is something he did before. Having reached the top, the climbers stopped to admire the view. Well, they reached the top first before they stopped to admire the view. So these present participle phrases have this different element of having followed by a past participle to form them as a perfect participle phrase. Now for participle phrases in their negative form. How do we make them negative? A common way is to use not to make them negative and to put that before the participle. So, not known for its beaches, the Azores does not attract many tourists. Not needing to leave quickly, she stayed for a chat. Not having finished, he continued with the job. So here we have not before the participle form to make it negative. We can also put not after the participle if the negative only affects the part afterwards. So instead of saying not known to enjoy social events, we could say known not to enjoy social events. So see the difference here. Not known means there is no existence of knowing. Knowing doesn't happen. If you say not known, then you don't know anything. If you say known not to enjoy social events, then we know something. What do we know? We know that they don't enjoy social events. So in one case, not known means we don't know. Know not means we do know, but the negative affects what comes afterwards. We do know that the next bit is negative. So see that difference between the two. Sometimes we could also use no. With present participle phrases, we could use no after the verb to indicate the lack of the noun coming afterwards. So declaring no interest in the prize. So here interest is a noun form. Declaring no interest in the prize, he didn't enter the competition. So no just isolates the noun and just refers to the noun afterwards. In other words, the noun is not there. There is no interest. The noun doesn't exist. Interest does not exist in this situation. Let's look at some general principles that affect all participle phrases now. Firstly, they usually describe the subject whether they come at the beginning of the sentence or at the end. So, excited, he ran home. He ran home excited about the news. Here, the participle form is in both cases referring to he. This most commonly applies when they are non-restrictive. So in the examples below, excited does not restrict he. It comes at the beginning or it comes at the end, and in neither position is restricting what we mean by he. It's not defining who he is. And this is where it's most common for them, the position of the participle to shift between the beginning and the end. But if they describe the object and they are defining and at the end, then they don't describe the subject. Look at the example here. He ran to the home decorated with balloons. So decorated with balloons is the participle phrase. Here it describes the object, the home. What is decorated with balloons? The home. Is it defining? Yes, because there are lots of homes and we're only interested in one particular home. Which one? The one decorated with balloons. Is it at the beginning or end? It's at the end. So here we have a participle phrase at the end, but it's describing the object, not the subject on this occasion. And there are other situations where the participle does not describe the subject, even if it's non-defining or unrestrictive. If it's a misrelated participle, this can happen. What do we mean by this? Look at the example here. Knowing Sally, it would be strange if she didn't call. Now, knowing Sally does not describe it. It describes the whole situation. It is what we call a dummy subject. It simply means the situation after exists. And if that's the subject of the sentence, then the participle phrase does not have to apply to the subject. It can apply to everything in the rest of the sentence. It's similar with the word there. Speaking to John, there seems to be a problem at the zoo. Speaking to John doesn't describe there. There means something exists. Speaking to John refers to the whole of the rest of the sentence, the whole situation. So it and there do the same thing. And then finally, considering the evidence, no reason exists to dismiss the theory. So sometimes we have participles that introduce the opinion of the speaker, but then the rest of the sentence simply describes what the speaker thinks. It doesn't mention the speaker itself. And in this occasion, the participle can simply relate again to the rest of the clause. The rest of the clause simply contains what the speaker thinks. It doesn't mention the speaker, so the speaker is not the subject, but the participle form here is referring to the whole of the rest of the sentence. And in some situations, the participle phrase has its own separate subject. Look at the example here. Assistance having been slow to arrive, the onlooker tried to rescue the cat herself. Having been slow to arrive, well, this is the participle phrase, but we've added on a subject beforehand, assistance here. And this is actually what having been slow to arrive refers to. So in this case, having been slow to arrive doesn't refer to the onlooker, it refers to the assistance before it. What does this sentence really mean? It means assistance had been slow to arrive, so the onlooker tried to rescue the cat herself. So in this situation where we put our own subject before the participle phrase will refer to the subject within its own phrase. Now let's look at some other situations where participles can occur. Firstly, in noun phrases. Relative clauses can be reduced to participle phrases in certain conditions when they form part of a noun phrase. First of all, if we have the relative pronoun plus the verb to be and then the past participle. Look at the example. The tourists who were taken to the mountains had a better time than the tourists who were driven to the beach. That's the full form. The first noun phrase is the tourists who were taken to the mountains. It's a noun phrase on its own. Who were taken to the mountains describes the tourists. But we have the relative pronoun who, and then to be, were, and in this combination we can delete it. We can reduce it and turn it into a participle phrase. And instead we could say the tourists taken to the mountains. We could do the same with the second part. Instead of saying the tourists who were driven to the beach, we could say the tourists driven to the beach. It's fine to use grammatically in speaking and writing. Another possibility is when we have the relative pronoun, then to be, and then the present participle. Buskers, so buskers are people who play guitar for money on streets. Buskers who were playing guitar in the square were watched by a large crowd. Who were, relative pronoun to be, can be deleted. We can simply say buskers playing guitar in the square. Also with instructions, look at the first one and look at the second one. The first one is an instruction in full form. People who disobey the rules will be disqualified. But we can convert this into people disobeying the rules will be disqualified. So here with an instruction that forms a relative clause, we've reduced it down into a participle phrase by using the ing form. People disobeying the rules will be disqualified. Now let's look at participles as adjectives. First of all, ed participles that turn into adjectives. Firstly, a subject which has been acted upon, similar to a passive. So I am bored is like this. It's like a passive. Something has happened to me. Something has happened to I. What has happened? Boredom. So to describe it in a participle form, I am bored. It happened to me. I didn't cause it to happen. It could also be something that happened to the noun. He sounds like a broken record. So records, this is a phrase that comes from many decades ago when people used to listen to what was called records or LPs. You'd have that round disc, you put something on it and that would play music. If you scratched it, it got broken. And something that often happened when it got broken is it would keep going back to the same bit again and again. It would play the same sound again and again because the needle that picked up the music would keep going backwards because of the broken part of the record. So if you say he sounds like a broken record means that he keeps on saying the same things over and over and over again. But here broken is a participle, and it describes something that happened to the record. The record got broken. So it's a broken record. It happened to the noun. Another reason for using an ed adjective, that's the past participle as an adjective, is to record the achievement of something relating to the noun. Some nouns allow you to do this, such as an advanced student is a student that's reached an advanced level. And sometimes after the verb to be, where something completed describes the subject. I am finished, that describes the completion of something by me. I finished it. I finished everything I need to do. But I could say I am finished. This is my situation, and it's just my situation is described by something which I completed. Now let's move on to ing adjectives. Ing adjectives don't describe something that happened to the subject, but they describe the subject itself. So if I say I am boring, then I am the one that causes other people to be bored. It gives the subject a sense of action. So it's a sense that I'm doing this. Very important to remember that. Ed happens to you. Ing, the action comes from you. Also, ing adjectives can describe a noun. So it's a living creature. So this is a creature that lives. And by using the ing, we're focusing on the active part of this. It's living, it's alive, it's active. Ing adjectives can be found in compound adjectives where the ing is often the final word, such as I live in an English-speaking country. Speaking describes English, but it actually comes after the original word. It makes this compound adjective. Next, participles as adverbs, and first the ed past participle. These can introduce actions affecting a whole sentence, such as they ran away scared. Scared tells us how they ran away, the manner of running away by them, scared. With the ing form, it refers to doing the action. They fell laughing. Well, laughing here describes how they fell. It's quite unusual, but it can come up. Finally, position changes meaning. With the word involved, when it comes before the noun it relates to, it means detailed. For example, we are carrying out an involved examination of the scene of the crash. This is a detailed examination. But if it comes after the noun, it means what we are focused on. The cars involved have been taken away by tow trucks. So the cars involved means the cars which were part of this accident. Also with concerned. Before the noun, it means worried. We are concerned that some animals will need to leave this zoo. After the noun, it means what we are focused on. The animals concerned. The animals which are the subject of what we're speaking about will be moved to another zoo.